Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Australia. Hello, Amy. How are you doing? And welcome to Raaise.
Hello. So good to be here. I'm full of nervous excitement.
Excellent. Well, listen, we've got lots coming up in the next hour and a half. But I know where you are in the world, there's an important way to start an event like this.
Yeah, of course. So for those of you who aren't down here, there's a beautiful tradition that has been going on for thousands of years with the Aboriginal communities, whereby they acknowledge the country that they're on. So I want to acknowledge the country that I'm on here in Southwest Australia, which is the Noongar people, the saltwater people. And I just want to pay huge respect to them, all the leaders past, future, present, their culture, their heritage. Is a real honour to be here and be part of this beautiful land. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much, Amy. And we have a big crowd in here tonight. Here they are. We have Adriana from Switzerland, Santiago from New Zealand, Gail from Blue Island, Safaris. Oh, North Mozambique is in the house. Amazing. Vicky from Earth Changes. Oh, some of the old school specialists are here with us tonight. So thank you for saying hi, for sharing your work. So we've got this event chat open, as you can see. So feel free to jump in there, share where you're joining from, what you're working on, why you're here, any questions you've got. There are also a couple of polls. So if you toggle across, you'll see there's two polls. The first poll is, what do you need the most help with? Not in life, maybe you can say whatever you want, but in answer to understanding impact investing. So this is a world that we want to help people with at Raaise, finding solutions I can be part of in response to the climate crisis, understanding the climate nature crisis, raising funds and funds for a climate startup, breakfast. Whatever your priority is right now, I can see someone's voted for figuring out for dinner. Well, that wasn't you, Amy, was it? And then the second question is, why are you here? I'm working on a climate startup. Two of you already said that. I'm keen to learn about them. I'm looking to connect with people working on solutions. Or if you're Neil, Amy's husband, you're here because you love neon yellow and pink. So those are the polls. So answer those and we'll share the results. Henry's here, organizer of the brilliant Uganda Marathon. Ed's here, mover and shaker of Climate World in the UK. Brilliant. So here's what's coming. Well, first we should say why we're here, right, Amy?
Yep.
We're here because of many things, but for two principal kind of emotions, I guess. And I was awake in the night thinking about this. First emotion, which is increasingly strong for me, is fear, and it's genuine. It's this fear of a reality that I've been aware of for 20 years, most of my adult life. I've seen countless documentaries. I've witnessed firsthand. I've read a lot of books. I run a book club, so it's not just showing off. I run one. I've read books on this topic. I've met a lot of amazing people working in this field. And the fear is growing because it feels like, one, we're reaching a crisis, well, we're well into a crisis, and two, the response isn't strong enough yet. But coupled with that feeling of fear, that I'm sure many of you share as well, is this feeling of excitement. And I was just finishing reading last night, brilliant little, it's almost like a handbook by Professor Mark Maslin. Mark might be even in the room today. You'll hear Mark wave. There's this beautiful page which I just want to share with you before we kick off. And it says, calling all entrepreneurs. This is an answer of how to save our planet. The global green economy is growing at a phenomenal rate and needs new tech and new products. Rapid change brings about opportunity. Never has there been a better and more important time to be an entrepreneur. We need disruptors. We need novel thinkers. We need new companies to drive innovation. We need a new wave of social and environmental entrepreneurs to help save the world that we depend on. So that really captures so much of why we're here and why we believe this really, really matters. But what I'd like to do just for the first few minutes before we meet our brilliant climate founders from Down Under is talk about where this journey began for you, Amy. So take us back to this incredible adventure you've been on over the last almost 2 decades, and try and share a little bit of what's happened and brought you to this event today.
Yeah, it's a very, very long story, so I'm going to truncate it as much as I can. So, yeah, fresh out of a degree in marine biology, I aged 22 with my then boyfriend, now husband, we wanted to show the world the absolute profound potential within tourism to address sustainability and conservation. So we went off to northern Mozambique, as you do, and that was just simply because it had incredible tourism potential, white beaches, elephants, humpbacks, reefs, but there was real extreme poverty too. I mean, life expectancy was 37. There was no access to safe drinking water whatsoever. Like, there was food security. And there was also marine environments that were starting to go overfished. So we thought this is such an incredible spot. So off we went in my early 20s. And if you don't know where Mozambique is, it's basically kind of, if you imagine Madagascar, it's like right at the tip of Madagascar, draw a line onto the mainland of Africa, and that's where we were. So it was a wild and hairy ride. And we built this small boutique hotel resort on the most exquisite beach. And we lived there for a long time and had incredible people that came to work with us. But ultimately, the team on the ground, the local communities, were just phenomenal. It was a real labor of love. And people might have come for the diving, but they left just so moved by the people. And behind the scenes, we were building schools. We had, like, at the end, we had these beautiful little motorbike ambulances as a response from the communities for helping women to give birth safely. Scholarships, 50-odd water points, 1,300 kids receiving school meals, all through community development projects through the local communities. So we were just sort of facilitating through our charity. So fast forward, and I'm gonna get slightly emotional now. The strongest cyclone to ever hit landfall on the east coast of Africa, I kid you not, arrived on a beach, and it took out everything. This is 2019. Like, all of the homes of all of the team, we're working with over 60,000 people at this point. Everything was gone. Our property, bits of boats were found along the beach, kilometers away. And sort of that, there was absolutely no recorded history of any cyclones in this region. So no one was prepared whatsoever. And the devastation was complete and utter. And because they had just before that, some unrest had started, because they'd found fossil fuels up north. And if you know much about this resources curse, it's called, in Africa, that so often conflict arrives after the discovery of resources. And this was the case too in northern Mozambique. So it was sort of this toxic mix of violence, this cyclone, and this place that we just loved so wholeheartedly. And that was like, and seeing and experiencing the carnage afterwards, that because there was unrest, we were the first ones to go in. No one was getting food in. The helicopters were circling, but nothing was happening. So sort of off the back of that, and then sort of after this, over the last year, like full-scale civil war has sort of emerged, and it's like watching the climate crisis in real time. And that was the moment where, okay, I need to do something. And I can only see through a climate lens now. Like, everything is so interconnected. Whether it's poverty relief or it's plastics or it's whatever it is, everything is all tied in under this climate bubble. And as an entrepreneur myself, it's like, right, I want to fix this. How can I fix this? How can I use my skills? And that was when Neil and I started talking about Raaise, and what is now Raaise. And we were basically thinking, right, well, ultimately, there are so many, we call them impact entrepreneurs, mission-driven entrepreneurs around the world who are trying to fix this. And just like Ben said, it is so important for these entrepreneurs to get the support that they need, both the capital as well as a crowd cheering them on. And we were thinking, well, we need to help these entrepreneurs, and we want to as well democratize the opportunity to invest in these businesses. It's like, it shouldn't just be the fancy VC funds that can make money out of these amazing businesses. Everybody should. And if everybody could invest in, both emotionally and financially, invest in these solutions, like what an incredible gift, and how we could really accelerate the movement that we need right now. So in a nutshell, that's sort of what how Raaise came about. So the team is me, my husband, who's lurking around here, Neil, my partner in crime, and Sonia, who's there somewhere on the Ethernet with her kids in the background, as well as Ben joined us, and I can't think of anyone better to help us grow our community than you, Ben, and also Rob as well, who's got his financial service license. So yeah, that's
a key component to this
this
plan.
Really important.
Amy, thank you so much. I know that's painful to reflect on what's gone on in Mozambique, but it's also such a powerful story of, what we're not hearing a lot of. The intersection of all these crises coming to a head in places like that, and of course the disproportionate impact on the people who haven't really, played any part or benefited from, the Industrial Revolution or the climate crisis to any great extent, and yet they're on the front line of the impacts, and so that sharpens our focus even more. So in a second we're going to meet our first founders, but before we do, I just wanted to say that this today is all about getting inspired and excited about projects you can become part of and support, but it's also about connecting with each other. Some of you are doing this in the chat already. Thank you for sharing. But after we've had these conversations with our four founders this evening, we're going to have 2 breakout sessions, which will happen on about an hour and 45 minutes, for you to connect with each other. And Amy will be hosting one on people who are working on climate startups, ideas for them, and I'll host the other one, which will be on any other questions or ideas about how you can play a part and just sharing where you're at with this on your own personal journeys. So do hang around for that. Okay, Amy, who have you got for us from down under who is fixing climate?
So excited. I know I'm quietly very excitable, but I'm really excited to introduce both Heidi and Julia and Jordy. So are you going to invite them onto the stage?
Come on, they come and join us. Just watch it. They're walking up the stage. Heidi's on stage a lot because of her work. So they're going to be here any second now. You watch this like streamline tech work. The crowds are here. They are.
Hey guys.
Hey,
buddy. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so I'll start with Heidi. So Heidi is a musician, an artist, beautiful artist. I've been listening today to Cloud Control. I love it. And she's a founder of FEET, which is a world-first initiative for artists to take ownership over accelerating our clean energy future at a critical time in human history. And I'm so pleased you came. I've only met Heidi briefly once before and just fell in love with her instantly. So it's really great to have you here, Heidi. And then we also have Julia and Jordy from Great Rap. If you're down under, you've probably, I would hope that you've already heard of Great Rap, because you should do, and you should have it in your kitchen cupboard right now. They've created I want to get this right, it's a compostable cling film wrap. And it's made out of food waste. How beautiful is that? And it's made using totally renewable energy to make it, and Australian made. Just fabulous, really inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun.
All right, Ben, we've got some quick fire questions. Shall I go straight ahead, or do you want to lead on that?
No, go for it. Let's fire them away.
All right. Okay. So really quick questions for you guys. And just, I don't know, just go for it. Doesn't matter in the order. Okay. So the quick question is, what's your favorite current climate startup that isn't yours?
I think I saw a really cool one the other day called Cove, and they were working on revolutionizing the material that drinking bottles are made out of, but they've been through this crazy amount of serious testing, and it was really cool to see the way they communicated their journey. I loved it.
Nice. Probably the most impactful one that I've been keeping an eye on recently is called Groundswell. They're another Australian startup, and they basically fund other startups. So not unlike Raaise, but it's less an investment, it's more a donation. But they just get people to sign up to $1,000 a year, And that sounds like a lot of money, but if you break it down per week, it's really not. And then that just means they get, like, every month they just pump out $40,000 grants, it feels like, just to awesome startups around Australia. I'm so impressed by their organization and impact they're already having.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks. I'll power on. Jordy, feel free to jump in, but otherwise I'll just keep going. Okay, so the next question is top resource for learning about climate.
It's a profound question.
Yeah, I feel like there's no one resource, is there? It's like you've kind of got to hunt and gather, forage for the truth.
Yeah, I'm all about the podcasts.
Yeah.
Like to tease me about. I love How to Save the Planet, Outrage and Optimism. There's so many good ones.
I love the Climate Council reports. It sounds pretty dorky, but they just, their reports are like Bibles for people like us. So I really refer to them regularly. So I'd really recommend that.
Okay, so last question. What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed by the climate crisis?
I think for me, that one is like, remember that what you're doing is you're doing something good. So it's like really easy to get carried away with big picture stuff, but like what you're doing on a small scale, whether it's like composting at home, or if it's I don't know, switching your super to the right place, or if it's banking with the right bank, or like really, really small steps, but like just like reminding yourself that that's good, and having a conversation with a mate and reminding them that it's probably a good next step as well, is like, that will actually save the world. It's going to take a long time, but it's a really good sort of starting step sometimes as well.
Yeah, definitely. A little action from everyone is totally obviously going to help.
I love that. Sonia reminded me, fellow co-founder, that you can't be anxious when you're doing something. So I love that it's just getting out and doing something, however small or menial it is. That it's all part of the bigger picture. Heidi, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I also just put in headphones and go for a walk and listen to my favorite record, because that's you're not going to get anything done if you're feeling anxious. So just get out of that headspace, change the channel, as they say.
Yeah. A cold swim if you're close to the beach too.
Amazing.
Right. Well, I think I'm going to dive into some of the bigger, juicier questions now, and I'll start off with you, Heidi. We really love to hear about people's stories. Like, what was it? What's your climate journey? Like, what was it? A slow burn? Was it like a moment? What brought you to this sort of to be such an active entrepreneur in the climate space?
Yeah. All right. So the first thing was doing nothing for most of my career. So just like getting on a plane and flying around the world and playing shows for so many years just got to me, and it culminated in like a personal, like I remember I was writing my New Year's resolutions one year, and we just finished a big tour and we were sitting down to write our next record. And I just thought, okay, I have to actually spend this time while I'm writing my record to understand what climate change is, and to do the research to know how to go back on tour in a way that's like not super destructive for the environment. So really, that feeling of like having wasted years doing nothing really spurred me to figure out what I could do differently. And then in that research process, I went on a climate change research trip to Heron Island, which is a beautiful small island in the Great Barrier Reef off the east coast of Australia. And I went there with 25 other people who were trying to learn about climate change. And we were led by Professor Tim Flannery. It was a remarkable experience. And I just want to share a really critical turning point on that trip, because, we're in the middle of paradise there. We're learning about the degradation of the world at the hands of humans. And we're talking to a marine biologist who spent 20 years on the Great Barrier Reef, understanding what the changes that are happening and simulating, like forecasting with 4 aquariums, what the oceans will look like at 1 degree of warming, 2 degrees of warming, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. And there was a moment where the 25 of us were just in this back area with aquariums. And this marine biologist is showing us the 4 tanks. And with the same kind of wildlife and marine life in each tank. By the time we got to the 4th tank, we very much understood the gravity of the situation, that we were like peering into the future. Like, this is the future that the oceans will become this warm eventually if nothing's done. And in that tank, not only was the coral completely broken down, but it was actually covered with algae, and there was a real stench to it. And we just had such a visceral emotional reaction to that aquarium. And that smell I still carry around with me as like a motivating force, that in no way, I'll do everything I can in my lifetime to avert a world in which the oceans smell like that. So I guess my climate journey, it happened over like a year and a half of like a lot of research between 2017, 2018. I called every climate scientist that would talk to me. I read every report available on the internet. And then I figured out a solution that was going to fly in my community of influence. That was the critical thing. But I guess we can get onto that in due course.
It's so powerful, and it's just so visceral, that smell. Yeah. So the next question I have leads straight onto feet. And I'd love for you to describe what feet is, kind of roughly touch on the business model without diving too deep, but just sort of a high level, what it is and how it's helping.
Yeah. So one of the key things that I understood from talking to the climate scientists is that the whole world needs to undergo this clean energy transition, and it needs to happen at a much greater pace than it is currently happening. And so I really latched onto that idea that what if I could mobilize the artist community to actually make that happen faster? Like, what would it look like to accelerate the rollout of renewables in Australia? And so I started a solar investment fund for touring musicians like myself. So anytime a band goes on tour in Australia, and if they're signed up with Feet, they can put a percentage of their profits into an investment fund, which purely finances solar projects around Australia. So we've got 3 solar farms that have been funded in that from our investment fund. And one of them we've seen completely to completion. So like, I walked through the empty field at the start of the project, and I haven't been able to visit there again since COVID, but we've got footage which shows it now completely up and running and operational. So all of our artists own a share of these investments, which gives them annual returns as well. So it's a win-win. It's an ethical investment with annual returns, as well as a planetary investment in the kind of clean future that we want to be building.
Brilliant. I want to just touch on something we discussed yesterday, actually, when we were doing our little tech check, around how, the science we've known about the facts, we've known so much for so long, and there's been this inertia, and we just haven't done enough. And it's just so important to right now is to come with open hearts and to be able to connect and to communicate. And this is such a big motivation for Raaise. I really wanted to ask you and understand, like, how do you communicate, and what's your strategy, and can you give us any examples of how you talk about climate and you sort of engage your community?
How I talk about it. Look, I mean, the facts speak for themselves, but the facts, you can leave a fact on a table and never be moved by it, right? So I find that the motivating thing is like deliberately throwing yourself into experiences that will impact your heart, because the heart, like the heart is the driver for behavior, in my experience. And I've read some psychological papers on it as well. So like, if you can, if you walk, it's sort of like a documentary effect. You watch an Edinburgh documentary and you walk and you're crying, you walk away, having nightmares for the next few weeks, but also like, having fallen in love with the planet all over again. And like those it's almost like you have to keep feeding yourself that kind of juice to keep you going. And so I've strayed from the question, but in terms of like how I communicate with the artists in our community around this issue, like we discuss personal stories a lot. We talk about the favorite trees that we encounter on our walks. Like, you know, the minutia, like stuff like that is actually, it sounds naff, but it's actually it's the lifeblood. Like we're all in relationship with the environment around us, and not, you know, and the environment that's closest to home as well is like, you know, it's our natural family. So I think it's really important to stoke the relational aspect of that when you discuss this issue with your community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I love what you've got on your website. We're artist-led, science-backed, and results-orientated. It's almost like a mantra for life. That it's so powerful, and I love how you're leading. Like the artists are the ones that are going to be inspiring and pulling us into this. So yeah, that was great. Thank you. All right, have you got this penultimate question is, have you got any good examples of any projects, startups that you want to share that you've been inspired by in the climate space?
Oh, sorry, is this question still to me?
Yep.
Oh gosh. Like probably, definitely, but I've just gone blank right now.
That's all right. Let's give you an easy one. Like, is there anything that everybody here, that's on here and off, what can we do? Like, is there any actions you want to give us, or is there anything we can do, even if it's as simple as following you, or what can we do?
I think, I mean, sure, follow me, but if you want to, I think find someone who's doing something cool that resonates with you, more to the point. Because, like, you know, you can follow everyone, right? But if you're actually not that in tune with what they're doing, it's just going to add more to the noise. So I think we're at a time in history where like our intention is a really precious commodity, and so I think really need to direct that specifically to where you find your interest being fed. So if that's not me, that's fine. Like, just find someone who you really want to champion, and do everything you can to champion them. Like us founders really need champions as much as, like, you know, not everyone was designed to build something from scratch. And if that's not you, like, you've got a super important role in like supporting people who are building stuff from scratch, and like volunteering to help them in any way possible. So that's what I would recommend.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I'm going to move over to this beautiful couple. So your journey, your climate journey, where did it start and how did you get here?
Yeah, for sure. But by the way, Heidi, that was great. That was an awesome note to finish on. Loved it. So thank you for that. So our climate journey is kind of, I guess, similar in the sense that we were working together in very different things, and we were kind of frustrated with the world around us, but we didn't quite know what to do about it. So my background is in architecture, so I've spent the last decade, I guess, imagining, or, you know, kind of designing and drawing a future and planning something that will be, you know, like a built environment that we're going to live in. And there's only so long that you can do that without questioning what sort of future am I actually, like, what does that look like? So I can design this building for 100 years, but if there's no environment around it in 100 years, why does that matter? And so I think that was a sort of question that was sitting in the back of my mind, kind of as I was working away at my desk at the studio, kind of like being really excited to design futures, but then, and Jordy was sort of working in wine and.
Yeah, I think it's, I know Sam Ventulo is somewhere watching this as well, down in WA, but sort of a conversation we had recently around like, what's the point in doing what you're doing if the world's burning around you? And I kind of had that sort of feeling like sometimes organically, making wines without adding chemicals and in a natural sort of way. Like, what's the point in doing that if it feels like everything else is burning down? So yeah, I think that sort of...
Yeah, so we're kind of, I guess, having this kind of existential career moment at the same time, to be totally honest. And then we landed on a product that was really pivotal in both our industries, and one that we actually didn't really have control over, which was pallet wrap. So, you know, we can control the crafts that we do, but there's a missing link, which is the supply chain, which is where petroleum-based plastic still existed. And, you know, we knew we wanted to do something together. We knew we were frustrated and kind of itching to get off our seat and do something. And that felt like the most, like you sort of say, you know, it affects our everyday life. So we had enough passion to kind of like understand how we could fix it. And, you know, it's been an incredibly long and hard journey full of a lot of learning. But I think, you know, it started out with an existential itch, to be totally honest.
Brilliant. We've lost Ben for a second. I'm sure he'll come back. And what about Great Wrap? Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about what it is and where it's going?
Yeah. So essentially, what it is we make compostable food packaging from food waste. Really, with a sort of, I guess, holistic view of closing that loop. And we have a solar-powered factory on the Mornington Peninsula where we employ, in the factory we have 15 staff. So it's COVID, so we kind of have to separate people and we're working remotely. But in total, we're about 30 staff now who are sort of driving this with us. And I get it, like Julie said, it sort of started off with pallet wrap as this disgusting problem that we saw when, you know, I was selling wine to, you know, like distributors overseas and going to shipping yards and seeing the horrible impact of that. And then Julia was designing these beautiful low carbon embodied buildings that would have materials show up with petroleum plastic wrap on it. And that was kind of started the journey. We built up from there. And then about a year ago, I think maybe a bit over a year ago, we started working with Monash University. And we've since developed a process in which we can convert food waste into a home compostable and marine biodegradable biopolymer in 72 hours. So we've got some really exciting technology on the way. And we're actually building our first biorefinery next year, where we're going to implement this sort of pilot scale process. And next year, we're actually going to manufacture about 25,000 tons worth of food packaging, as well as of pallet wrap, cling wrap, silage wrap for agriculture.
But the really exciting thing about all of that sort of development that we've kind of been through is that it's actually been driven by, you know, big businesses reaching out to us, being really excited by the story and wanting a product like we're producing. So it's driven this incredible growth, and it's been the most exciting sort of takeaway in the last year. You know, we've noticed, we started this about 3 years ago, and I think since 2020, we've seen this real shift. You know, it used to be a kind of hard conversation and you'd have to explain, but since then it's like, you know, been really positive, exciting. You know, I think we feel quite optimistic about the future of the world as a result, which is...
Yeah, well, it's like, as you know, I felt like before it was almost like there was this person who was like head of sustainability. It's like, your job is to make us look a little bit better. And now it's like...
Well, it was like a marketing tool rather. It was like we could, you know, that would look good, you know, whereas now it's, you know, it's driven by intention. People have the same itch that we obviously all have, you know, it's great.
Yeah, big time.
So encouraging to hear, because we feel it too. But we're also optimists, clearly, like you. It's really good. We had these similar moments early days in our place in Mozambique where we had to hide what we were doing because people say we just need a good product, but we're like, okay, hiding everything. And then suddenly they had these moments, but no, actually we see a value in what you're doing. And it's like, aha, it's a light bulb. It's like people are starting to see value in having a good product. It's really exciting to hear. but like I know that it couldn't have been smooth sailing all the way. Are there any bumps in the road that you'd like to share? Like I know there's quite a lot of entrepreneurs on the call, and are there any like little lessons or anything you want to share, like little challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for us, because obviously we're pursuing, we're trying to, I guess, reinvent a material, but also run a business, and so when you're making choices with those sort of two pillars, sometimes you do things that are not perfect, like it might not be the perfect product, or there might be something that's slightly off. And I think, as long as you can communicate what you're trying to do and that it's a journey and a process, I think just kind of keep charging ahead. That's what we've been doing and it seems to work. So that'll be my big takeaway. I think, the problems that you face every day feel like the world will end if they don't go right, but then you wake up the next day and there is a new problem, and that one's kind of like feels like a lifetime ago. So
one of our mentors told us that running a business is like waking up and chewing glass for breakfast every morning, and sometimes it feels like that, and then sometimes we've had an amazing week this week with just like bringing on some amazing like iconic Australian companies who are going to take tens of thousands of kilometers of plastic out of the environment, and like we're really excited. It's all going to be from food waste, and it's all going to be made locally, and it's so awesome. And then you have another week that can feel like the complete opposite. So it's sort of just like it's been able to sort of endure the lows and pass on the highs to your team as well.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree that like when you're so mission driven in what you're doing, that the highs, it might even be 5%, 10% of the time, but they are so high, and it's so important that you do start to forget the crap. It's easy to go forward when there's something pulling you that's so strong and it's so much bigger than you. So
you
can see
absolutely
that.
It's cool. I think we're really lucky to feel that. I think it's special.
Yeah. I don't know if I touched this. Any big surprises? Is there anything that's really surprised you in your journey?
I think the biggest one for me is like everyone talks about culture in your company. Everyone's like, oh my God, like culture is so important, and for us, like I like to think that Julia and I are like nice people, and so culture just kind of comes naturally. But the big thing is like you actually have to really work on your company culture, and that could be if you're like 3 people or if you're 50 people, but like really working on that and sort of, I don't know, cultivating all the values that you want to sort of cultivate is like actually like really, really important from day one. And it's just from how you communicate to how you work as a team and all the things that you do together. And I think that was the big sort of like massive learning, because you can be doing the coolest thing on the planet. You could have the technology that could change the world, but what's the point of doing it if you're an arsehole, like, or if your company sucks to work at? So I think it's really important to like, I think, if you really do want to like work for a company or start your own, to just like, implement really good culture.
Yeah, and check in on it all the time.
More
often than you think you need to.
Yeah. It's such wise words. I couldn't agree with you more. And I always feel like I could write a book how not to do things, like about this big, and how to do things about this big, because you just make so many mistakes. And I know that it's difficult. Culture is, you're so right, it's something you have to work on so much. So the last question I've got for you guys is, how can we support you? Obviously, we're all going to go out and buy lots and lots of great wrap. Apart from that, like, what is it? Like, could you give us, like, are there any call to actions that you can give us?
My biggest, and one that's front of mind at the moment, we're talking about culture. We're looking to build out a beautiful global team. So if you know anyone, we're hiring in kind of all departments at the moment, those departments are becoming an actual department rather than just on our chalkboard.
Yeah.
So I think if you're in this chat, you've obviously got some shared excitement for this space, and it would be great to kind of hear from you, whatever your skill set might be. Would be my call. What's yours?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like we're building a team really quickly. We've been lucky enough to enjoy really fast growth through COVID. We've gone from 2 to 35 in about 6 months, and it's going to continue on this trajectory. And we just really want to bring great people on board for the ride. And so if there's anyone sort of watching, like, please email us. I think our email's on our website. So yeah, get in touch, because I think, as Heidi sort of mentioned before, like, you don't need to be a founder
No.
of a company. It's just like work for someone doing good. Like, if we weren't doing great rap, I'd be working for someone doing something fantastic. And yeah,
it's a really great note to finish the small Aussie chapter on. Thank you all so much. That was so inspiring, and personally, I really enjoyed talking to you. We're going, I think, I'll hand the reins back over to Ben. But
I just wanted to say that I did sitting here for the last 20. Sorry, Amy, I was going to say last 20 minutes listening in. It's been fantastic. It reminded me of sitting in Byron Bay in 2005, reading Cradle to Cradle, which is all about the problems of, like, the circular economy not arriving yet, listening to a live band, and then now just listening to Heidi and then you, Jordy and Julia, talk about what you've created. You're like, 15 years later, finally, it's happening. So thank you. I can't wait till great rap hits the shores on this side of the world. You're awesome. Keep it up, share, and everything you're doing, and we'll try and amplify it as much as we can. Thank you, and see you guys soon. And now I'd love to welcome our British climate founders, British climate startups onto the stage. We have Mandeep, Soor, and Linzi, Hawkin to join us here for a quick chat about what they're doing. So Jordy and Julia, we'll see you later. Heidi, will see you later. Let me just add Mandeep. Crowd is here still. Yeah, that's fast growth, 2 to 35 in 6 months. You're right, Vicky. That's quick.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mandeep should be landing, and Linzi, if you're there, come and join us as well. Reflections on hearing the stories, Amy.
Oh gosh, you've put me on the spot. I'm just buzzing, to be honest. I just love to hear people's stories and their passion. Hi, Linzi. So I'm blown away by the way that Heidi has taken that passion and just dove into the science and came out of that pool and had such a great strategy. I love that, and the growth that Julia and Jordy have experienced. I can't even get my head around some of those numbers.
And they've made Bing films sexy, which is probably the greatest achievement. Talking of epic stories, Linzi is here with us. Hey, Linz, great to have you with us at Raaise this morning. This morning with you and I. So just we got quick fire questions. Yeah, we better keep this up. So we're going to start with you. Mandeep's on her way, so we'll start with you, Linz. Favorite climate startup that you're currently checking out that isn't yours?
I'm gonna have to say our really good friends at Trees. So they are like they're based in the US, but also one of their teams in Oz, and they are all about blue carbon and making blue carbon projects happen around the world. So investing in kelp forests and seaweed farms and coral restoration and mangroves. And I love how they've taken something that can seem quite complex, like blue carbon, and literally even the name Sea Trees is like, trees that grow in the sea. So yeah, their work's amazing.
Fantastic. And we were talking a lot about Brent Smith, haven't we, recently, who's this amazing seaweed or greens farmer that's been featured on loads of podcasts. And in terms of your learning, I know you've been a voracious learner in this world of ocean and climate for a long time, but what resource are you using at the moment, or do you keep going back to that you find really useful?
I think the majority of it is like just being plugged into the right people. So it's less, I mean, there are lots of books and podcasts and stuff, but it's being part of communities, and really, I think especially now with COVID, being really intentional about just sparking those conversations and staying super curious and connected to everyone that's doing the really good work. And I think that that's like part of our business strategy, is like, how do we have more interesting conversations with good people doing the work, you know?
You put this in practice. I see this on your socials, where you're constantly tagging people, projects, and your message groups and connections and so on. So it is really powerful. And what do you do when you're stressed out about this? Because we've talked about this before, right? It feels like the waves of crisis are growing, and they're going to keep coming, right? So how do you deal with it and stay so positive and action orientated?
Everything for us just comes back to nature, predominantly ocean, hence the name Protect Blue. So yeah, it's just like unplug from screens and all of that and plug into nature. So it's like, you know, lucky enough to live on a small island where the ocean is accessible, albeit sometimes quite cold and wild, but accessible all the time. So yeah, just get out into nature, and that always seems to be it's just like unplug from screens and all of that and plug into nature. So it's like, you know,
perfect
to live on.
We got a little echo. Your answer was so good that it was broadcast twice, Linzi. Mandeep, welcome. How you doing? Good to see you.
Good. Sorry about that.
So are you ready for these quick fire questions as well? I'm going to put you straight on the spot now you're here. So outside of Bendi Fashion, what's the climate startup you're admiring at the moment?
One I've admired for quite a while, actually, Olio. It's a food sharing app here in the UK. And it's amazing. I think food waste is a huge issue in the West. I use it almost on a weekly basis. I guess that might mean I should be better about my shopping, but hopefully it's a good thing in the sense of something's going off or there's too much, and you just put it up there. Someone will come and pick it up almost the same day. It's great.
We love Olio, and we're hoping Ash is going to be joining a Raaise meetup soon. And I can't wait to see their collab with Great Rap at some point. And what about resource, like when you need to tap back into the learning around climate and everything that's going on in your industry? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so fashion and the impact of fashion on climate change was something that I didn't really know about a year and a half ago. So the learning curve has been super steep. I think for quick learning, sort of micro learning, I've used things like Khan Academy. When I want to learn like something quite academic, there's Future Learn. I've done a bunch of different courses on Future Learn. Similarly, Coursera, edX. And then in a more general way, I think I read a lot, hence how I know you from Rebel Book Club. I think it's brilliant. Definitely some books I've read in a more general kind of setting. David Wallace Wells, The Uninhabitable Earth, I think really opened my eyes in a way that I'd never realized before. But on a more positive setting, I read Bill Gates's How to Avoid a Climate Disaster recently. I think it's full of a lot of hope, really practical hope, which I think I cling to a lot more than, it's very like, if we do this, then we can change this. And that feels very real.
Yeah, there's a logic there. And what do you do? We've just heard about like getting to nature and into the ocean to fix our stress around this. What do you do when you're feeling overwhelmed?
Oh, I'd love to get out to the ocean. Sadly, it's not particularly close. But yeah, getting out to nature is great, even if it's just a walk. I meditate actually in the last couple of years, especially since lockdown. It's something that I've taken up. I find it really helpful. I think it's a personal thing for every person, what they will find helpful. Also exercise a fair bit. So I think just having a kind of pattern that helps you stay sane is great. But actually, sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed, it's like, well, before I was doing something else and sometimes even making products that were helping sell more things that maybe people didn't need. And now I'm doing something to alleviate some of that as a founder. So that in of itself is quite helpful. I think taking action in either small or large ways regularly is good.
Excellent. Too much stress, go back to work. There we go, with a bit of meditation in between. Exactly. Fantastic. Right, Linz, let's go back a little bit into your journey, which I always love hearing, and then come to your story, Mandeep. But like your relationship with this planet and the ocean is it goes literally deep, right? So where did your wake up or journey start?
Gosh, yeah. So I obviously grew up here on an island, so I think there's a connection to ocean that's almost, yeah, it's just part of your DNA. And my first kind of gig out of school was running a surf school. So I spent 5-6 very happy years teaching people to surf and pinging between here and Australia and various other places. Just, yeah, so either teaching people to surf or surfing myself. And so that was an absolute delight. And I realized during that time, you know, I think when you have that very intimate relationship with nature, you know, and at that time, which was quite a long time ago, you know, the whole plastic pollution conversation didn't exist at all, but you could see it, you know. And so then I went on to work for the government. I thought I was going to save the planet by working for the government. So I worked for the Environment Department here, running campaigns and education programs for them, and very quickly realized that that was not how I was going to save the planet, because there was a lot of red tape and a lot of meetings, and it just didn't seem hugely efficient. And so I ended up running music festivals, which might sound like a really obscure way. But we, you know, I think through surf schools, I'd found out that there are different ways to get this into conversation and to get this into people's heads. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a linear way. And so, you know, teaching kids about the ocean and having them fall in love with it, and then having people come to music festivals and thinking about why we've got no plastic on site and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and then ended up where I am now, running a very, very niche agency, which is we're just ocean focused. So we work solely in kind of ocean conservation projects. But I think in the last few years, a lot of it has been around the connection between ocean and climate. You know, it's like ocean conservation has felt almost like in a separate box. And thankfully, you know, the plastic pollution conversation is a really interesting one, because we're still having to connect the dots for people of going, you get that plastic comes from fossil fuels, right? And so there's all of those connections. And so for us, it's about, yeah, helping people understand that climate change cannot be addressed without addressing ocean conservation.
Absolutely. And you say it's niche, Protect Blue, but it's hugely ambitious in terms of all the things you're tackling, and you cover so much ground. What are, in terms of like the focus at the moment and the business behind this, like what are you zoning in on?
So we've kind of got two arms, I guess. One is internal, so projects that we're working on building ourselves, which is, I guess, more of the startup space. So they're both education orientated, really, but one is for kids and one is for grown-ups. So the kids one is a curriculum called Cloud and Dirt, which is a way of combining design thinking and sustainability for kids. We've been working on that for quite a long time. It started through our collaboration with a company called Starboard, who are an amazing water sports company. And we built an education program with them back in 2015 called Sup Kids, which was sneakily teaching kids about ocean conservation through stand-up paddleboarding. So we were expanding on that. And then Undercurrent, which is our kind of grown-up version, which is basically helping ocean activists have a bigger impact in the work that they do. Because so much of the work that we see is like there's an army of people who want to do good stuff, but they don't always have the impact they want, because maybe they don't know how to tell their story well, maybe they don't know how to fundraise, maybe they don't know the right connections, they don't know how to brand themselves. And so we kind of bring in our commercial skill sets to help them do that and kind of take them through this undercurrent process. And then the external stuff is like agency work, and that ranges all over the show. We just built an online ocean activist training camp for a UK B Corp called Finisterre. We're working with an Icelandic vodka brand at the moment, helping them with their footprint. And again, like we're always sneaking blue carbon in, so working with some interesting stuff there. And yeah, it's just finding ways to get people engaged and excited on the conversation around ocean.
Well, you do that so well, and it always strikes me that with the theme that's actually coming up a lot today in this conversation is the power of effective storytelling and bringing people on board with the story. With the 2 education programs that you're building for kids and adults, what's the opportunity? So we've got a lot of influential entrepreneurial people here this morning. How can they get involved? How can they support your mission?
Yeah, so we're almost ready. We're almost ready to ask for help, I guess, with the kids one especially. Yeah, it's something that has been worked on and a huge amount of blood, sweat and tears has gone into. So we're probably, I would say, within the next 6 months, we will be actively looking for people to support us. And that's in different ways, whether someone wants to become a Cloud Hunter guide, which is like learn how to teach the curriculum, or wants to help roll it out in a different country, all of that good stuff. And then Undercurrent, again, it's just connecting ocean activists who you think could use a helping hand, and send them our way. I think one of the things that kind of breaks my heart quite often is I meet lots of people who are working in the ocean space, and if I've got my commercial head on, they'll be like, oh, we've done this campaign, and I'll go look at it and I'll be like, damn, I don't think it's gonna have the impact because maybe your website doesn't really read that well, or you're not telling your story in an effective way. And so any way that we can help people with that is always, it feels like a real privilege.
Yeah, and you're so good at it, and we've seen the rise of the work you've been doing, and Surfers Against Sewage, which I remember back from the mid-90s was this little niche surf activist brand, and now of course Hugo and the team and people like yourself are leading the charge here in the UK or on Sky News and whenever they need what's going on with conservation and the oceans. So this is your time, and you worked hard for it. And then in a completely different industry, and still line, Linzi, we probably have a couple of switch over to you, Mandeep, in a different industry, but connected to the ocean, of course, fashion. So Mandeep, take us back a couple of steps. When did this journey start for you?
So I think the overall journey started a long time ago. I actually tried to, I knew I wanted to do something related to climate. It's such a big problem. I think we're all thinking about it, and we know that it's just too important to not do something about it actively. And about 10 years ago, I even tried to switch. At the time I was working in finance, and I thought, oh, maybe I could do something related to finance, but green finance. And that didn't happen. But somehow, many years later, this sort of became a possibility. I was working at a technology startup here in the UK, and they made data science tools on demand for lots of brands, retailers, lots of different types of businesses. And we were basically designing AI tools to help them either sell more things or figure out why their customers were leaving, or just understand data better. And I started talking to, I'd been speaking to a long time, a dear friend of mine, Ben. We went to university together. He'd spent the last 10 years working in climate change, mostly related to NGOs. He worked at the Carbon Disclosure Project. He also worked at Burberry as part of their sustainability team. And he was talking about some of the challenges that they had internally. And it was actually, this sounds like a data problem, and happens to be that I've just spent the last few years solving these kinds of problems in other industries. And so we came together and sort of hatched a plan, as it were. At that point, I mean, we didn't really know that this is where we would end up some year and a half later. We started talking to people, putting some ideas together. We spoke to some other smart people we knew. I think, one of the lessons that I've learned along the way is it takes a village plus some more. You kind of think that you're figuring out, but no. I think I've had more conversations with people about what we're building than in any kind of work environment that I've ever been in before. And it's incredible. People just coming out of the woodwork. They're like, oh, I think I've got this idea, or I know so-and-so, they could be helpful. Or we did a business that was kind of similar to this, and this is what we learned. And that's just been an incredible experience in of itself. But for fashion specifically, felt like this was a great opportunity to use our kind of combined skills and actually do something. So just some kind of high level statistics. I think almost up to 10% of the global carbon measure is from possibly fashion, including supply chains and manufacturing. 20% of industrial wastewater is from fashion. And we've all we all know about some of the people impacts and the way that people are treated in supply chains when we don't know what's going on. So it just feels like a really pressing problem and a sufficiently large one to you could spend your whole life on this. We started speaking to brands and they were like, yeah, we'd love to talk about this. We'd love to understand our supply chains better. But, a single item of clothing might have been, made in 5 different places across 3 different continents and been through hundreds of different hands. And so tracking all of that is quite difficult. And if you're a small company, which the majority of brands and retailers are, so just for example, in the UK, there's 11,500 brands and retailers, but 95% of them are small and medium sized. So for them to use kind of really, I think, cutting edge technology is quite hard. So we knew we had to make something that was easy to use, something that would help save them time, and something that would help them to understand their data in a pretty easy, quick way. So that's what we've started to build. We're working with a retailer now in the UK. They've got 900 brands on their platform, and they're looking to help them figure out where they sit in their sustainability. I think it's more than carbon. It is all of these other things that I mentioned. So things like the water impact, what happens to your pollution, how do you think about waste, what are the ways in which you treat not only people in your business in the UK or in other countries, but also those in your supply chain. So helping them figure that out and improve it over time, I think, is incredible. One of the things that we questioned right at the beginning is, should we be working with companies who are already doing a great job, or those that actually perhaps they haven't got started, or maybe they're not that great, and to make a difference where a company could actually improve where they're at, I think is where we can see the most gains. Maybe they could reduce their carbon by using different types of energy or using a different type of material. Maybe they didn't know what was going on in some of their supply chains, but now they can have audits, or they go to use a third party in order to ensure that like living wage is given to their supply workers. So making these kinds of changes, I think, is really great.
It's to hear, and congrats on that big partnership. It's you're going to get many more. This is a technology venture, right? And so, Mike, I'm curious about the challenge here. Is it the actual, like, all those different components being built into a data tool, and that some of them have with huge variables, human variables, and complexities of big and everything else in the supply chains? Is it a finance issue? Is it building the right team? What's sort of top of the pile at the moment?
So actually, we think we're really lucky with the team. We've got a really, really nice team. I know every co-founder probably says this, and they're like, "Oh, my team is lovely," but they are really lovely. I mean, I think they're incredibly dedicated, super, super smart, and if I'm honest, all underpaid. But that's sort of the situation that you have in a startup. We are looking to raise soon. I think financing is always an issue for a technology startup, especially one like ours that's looking to build quite complicated data science tools to really extract information and automatically kind of filter it and put it into dashboards and be able to show that to brands in real time in a way that they've never really understood it. I think in some ways we're trying to replace consultancies, which are too expensive for the majority of brands, and have a tool do that instead. So I think funding is always a challenge. As any startup, we're about 9 months old, so funding's probably a big issue for us. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can help with that in the coming year, Mandeep. Now, Amy, have you got a sort of a closing question or thought for Linzi and Mandeep? Or reflection on that, on what you've heard?
Questions for both of them. I think for Mandeep, for you, I think one of the light bulb moments when I was reading what you were saying was about how people kind of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but have I got it right, that you want people to be able to choose their clothes, not just the size and the price, but also its ethics. I just love that, the simplicity of that, despite the incredible tech and data behind. Have I got that right? Brilliant.
Sort of turned into a bit of a motto. We just thought it was great. 2021, and we still don't know where our clothes come from, and we don't know what the impact of those are. That seems crazy to us. It's a really high goal, but it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
And Linzi, I wanted to come back to you on like man's and woman's and humankind's relationship with the ocean. just to come with a biggie at the end. Like you've lived next to it in a focused, but so many people are at distance. I've watched Blue Planet, but the relationship with the ocean it's not a close one. And of course, we all know the closer we get to a part of the world, the more we understand it, the better we respect it, and therefore change our habits. So for those of us that aren't near the ocean, what can we do? We support you to play a bigger part.
Yeah, I think was actually we had a panel as part of C7 with Finisterre, and one of our speakers was Wallace Nichols, who wrote an incredible book. You need to add it to your book club list, called Blue Mind, which is about the neuroscience of like the impact of being like near or under water, and the work that he's doing now, and our mutual friend Eastleigh Britain is doing lots of work in that space. Nick at the Wave in Bristol, like, is around this idea of blue health and blue space, and connecting people to those spaces, because at the moment so much of the conversation around climate and conservation is green, not blue, and so what I love about Wallace's work is at the moment he's basically saying, what if we shifted the conversation from just being ocean to being like a water story, and all of us have a body of water near us. It might be a stream, it might be a pond, it might be a creek, it might be the ocean, but like, can we at least connect to some water? Because I think that's the crazy thing is so many of the issues that are facing our oceans come from issues that are nowhere near the ocean. And so we actually need to really activate and engage people who are inland and who are disconnected. And so much of Jay's work is around the mental health benefits of ocean and water anyway. So it's like double whammy. Like, we get to protect the planet, but also we get to improve our mental health, which right now I think is at the top of most people's lists.
And we are water ourselves, 70% at least. So it's kind of crucial. It is the life force. Mandeep and Linzi, thank you so much for being with us today and for being leaders in your spaces. And so we've known you for years, and it's we don't get to spend much time together in the same place, but it's so great to follow your work. And Mandeep, it's amazing what you've got up and running in such a short space of time. And it's this thing it was startups, it's this idea of like the gold rush. Okay, there's maybe a lot of people trying to build retail products and services at the moment, whether it's rental in fashion or other products that we can, like, conscious consumers can physically get their hands on, but actually building the tools, gold rush, is just, if not more important, in the sense of their scalability and their impact. And that's what you're doing, which is just it's so great to hear about it. And so get involved, everyone. All the links are there, and hopefully we can help you raise some funds soon.
Yeah.
Nice to see you both. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Bye. All right, Amy. There we go. Our first of all, in conversation. Now, I know you've got lots of thoughts, but I'm not going to let you share them now, because we want to go and talk to the people who are still with us. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to switch now to sessions. So on your navigation, you'll see something that says sessions with a little red circle. Now, if you go over there's 2 sessions. Amy and I are going to jump across. And for the next 20 minutes or so, come and have a chat with us. Share your hopes, dreams, concerns, ideas. And then we'll jump back. I'll jump back just to do a quick wrap up. So we'll see you over there. See you in a bit, Amy.
All right. See you, Ben.